Summary of Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. A gentleman and farmer named Mr. Shelby talks about a debt he owes to a slave trader named Haley on his Kentucky plantation in the 1840s. Haley forces Shelby to sell Uncle Tom, who is Shelby's most reliable slave, and Harry, Eliza's fair-skinned child who works as a maid for Mrs. Shelby. George Harris is a fair-skinned slave from another farm who is married to Eliza. George used to work in a factory and was very smart there. George has chosen to run away rather than spend his life working in the fields for his angry boss, who fired him because he was too good at his job. After George has already left, Eliza hears the Shelbys talking about Tom and Harry's sale. She and Harry then run toward Ohio with the goal of getting to Canada. Haley is mad that Eliza got away, so she travels with Shelby's smart slave Sam to try to find her. Sam is able to hold Haley up. In the middle of winter, Eliza and Harry jump from one ice floe to the next on the Ohio River and land in Ohio. They are taken in by a Quaker family and meet up with George Harris again. Harris has been traveling as a Spanish gentleman. Uncle Tom doesn't try to get away because he thinks it is his job to be sold as his boss planned. George Shelby, Jr. sees Tom before the sale and says he will bring him back to Kentucky because he loves him. Along the Mississippi, Haley takes Tom on a steamboat ride. That's where they meet Augustine Street Clare, a wealthy man who lives in New Orleans with his daughter Evangeline, his wife Lree, and a lot of slaves. Augustine has been in the North to get his cousin Miss Ophelia, a strict and religious woman who will help raise Eva, a religious and kind girl. Eva and Tom become friends, and when Eva falls overboard, Tom saves her. Tom is bought by Street Clare. Some kind Quakers, like Phineas Fletcher, lead George, Eliza, Harry, and others to Sandusky, Ohio, which is on the lake that borders Canada. Along the way, two slave hunters working for Haley, Tom Loker and Marks, almost corner the group of escapees. But George blocks a shot from Marks and hits Loker, who is then hurt when Fletcher pushes him over a chasm. The slave hunters run away, and George and his group take Loker to another Quaker home to rest. At the Street Clare farm, Uncle Tom is taken care of well. He read the Bible to Eva. Topsy is a young slave girl that Miss Ophelia takes care of, but Topsy keeps acting up. Eva's health gets worse, though, and she says she's going to go back to her father in heaven soon. Eva tells Street Clare that she will love Topsy and asks her to promise that he will become a Christian and free his slaves after she dies. Eva dies, and Street Clare starts to do what she wanted, but he gets killed in a cafe fight before he can finish. When Marie's husband wants to free Tom, she doesn't do it. Instead, she sells Tom to Simon Lree, a cruel farm owner. A young slave girl named Emmeline was also bought by Lree and is now living on his farm near the Red River. Uncle Tom meets Cassie, a slave who used to be pretty. To harden Tom, Lree makes him work in the fields and gives him a whip fellow slave to do. Tom says he will do anything his master tells him, but not hurt another person. Lree and his guards, Sambo and Quimbo, beat Tom badly because they wanted to break his sacred spirit. After getting ideas from Tom, Cassie and Emmeline want to get away. They plan to hide in the attic, which they tell Lree is dangerous, and then make it look like they are getting away through a swamp. A few days later, they leave for good. Tom is killed when Lree takes out his anger on him. Back in Ohio, Loker finds that Quakers are taking care of him, even though he tried to catch George and Eliza. He sees how bad he was in the past and changes his mind. At the same time, the Harris family takes a boat to get to Canada. When George Shelby Jr. gets to the Lree farm, he sees Tom just before he dies. Tom tells George to be a good Christian, and George promises that he will never own slaves and will work to free them. George meets Cassie and Emmeline on the boat ride back to Kentucky. When they meet Madame de Thou, a rich woman, it turns out to be George Harris's long-lost sister. This group, without George, goes to Montreal to visit the Harris family. De Thou meets her brother again, and it turns out that Cassie is Eliza's mother. When George goes back to the Shelby estate, He frees his slaves and says that Uncle Tom's House will always stand for faith and goodness. At the end of the book, Beecher Stowe says that the characters are based on real people and that slavery is an evil practice that must come to an end.
About the author. Harriet Beecher was born in Connecticut in 1811 and went to school at Hartford Female Seminary. Her parents were Christian ministers. She later became a Hartford teacher. When she was 21, she went to Cincinnati, Ohio, with her family. When she was 25, she married Calvin Stowe, a theology professor, and they had 7 children together. In the early 1850s, Beecher Stowe moved to Maine with her husband, who had taken a job teaching at Bowdoin College. It was there, after the controversial Fugitive Slave Act was passed, that she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin and had it serialized in the newspaper The National Era.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.